So today is Friday, the 22nd of November 2024, and we're here at Barmore on the York Sangha retreat. And I just want to start by acknowledging a teacher who was very important to me, who actually introduced me to meditation, and she came really strongly to mind this morning. And she was the director of a youth theatre that I was part of in Sheffield from the age of 14. And in some respects, I feel I've never left it because it was such an important part of my life. When I was 18, 19, along with several other people, I was applying to drama schools to try and pursue a career in acting, and I had lots of rejections, and then one of them in London asked me to go back for a second audition. And as soon as I got that letter, and it was a literal letter at the time, it wasn't an email, I thought, I don't want to do this. And I spoke to her, the director, she's called Meg, and she said, I know you don't, you're not really committed, you should be a teacher. And when she said that, I thought, no, I can't be a teacher. But apparently I am a teacher. And yeah, it's something that I've done a lot of now in my life. And I just always like to acknowledge her and her conviction in what I should be doing. So in this talk, I'm going to share about some simple practices of slowing down, and also explore a bit of what gets in the way for me, mostly mental formations about what should be happening at this time of year. But I'm going to begin with a few questions. Why are we here? Why have we come on this retreat? Why do we feel the need to gather together? We all came expecting it to be cold, and we're all really glad it's not. And some of us are sharing rooms with people we don't normally share with, and we're maybe eating food that's different from our usual fare. Maybe we're getting up a bit earlier than we often do. So what have we come for? Does your heart have a particular question that it wants answering? Do you feel there's something lacking in your practice that will be fed here in this great company? I quite like questions like this that shake me out of my comfortable state into a slight discomfort that's more awake. So let's just take a moment to ask yourself, why am I here? What do I want out of this retreat? And don't rush to settle on an answer, but let the questions live, be alive in you for a moment. We don't need any answers yet, but I have been thinking about this over the past few weeks as I've been preparing for this talk. And for me, in particular at this time of year, I feel I want to resist the pull from collective consciousness that terms this time of year the silly season. And sometimes I feel as if calling it that, it's okay. It's like giving ourselves permission to go a bit mad, and certainly thinking in terms of Christmas, spending money that maybe we don't have, on gifts that people don't need, buying more food than we normally have, eating things that we don't eat the rest of the year. And actually also knowing deep down that it doesn't really give us any lasting nourishment. And I just wonder where these ideas come from. That, I mean, one I was aware of, particularly when my children were younger, was a kind of, if I'm a good parent, I'll spend a lot of money on my children. Those kind of ideas that really clearly aren't rooted in the awareness of the four establishments, four kinds of nutriments, edible foods, sense impressions, volition and consciousness. And I find the months leading up to Christmas can be a time when I can get easily carried away unless I practice diligently. And I'm really grateful to be here practicing with you all, practicing together and supporting each other at this time of year. For me and my family, the time is very much focused on Christmas and birthdays. We have 3 birthdays in December. And so it's very much a time of getting together, which is always really lovely and can be busy and noisy. And it doesn't always contribute to my being able to listen to what the season is telling us and slow down in tune with it. And so when we can, Tim and I will go to Plum Village for the New Year retreat, because we've had quite enough of busyness at that point, and it's really lovely to have some quiet time and some nourishment from meditation. When our children were young, we were fortunate, although I probably didn't recognise that at the time, that actually we didn't have any money to spare and we couldn't spend a lot of money on gifts for them. Just after Grace was born, Tim gave up his job and became self-employed, and we remortgaged the house to ensure that we had enough to live on while the business was being established. And because of the nature of his business, which was marketing tins, he knew that there wouldn't be any money coming in for at least a year. And so we had to manage that. And we did manage it, and it was absolutely fine. I remember at one time, child benefit was the most money we had coming into the house. And so at Christmas time, because we didn't have any money, we made gifts for them. And that's why I feel fortunate, because we had to be creative and look at things in a different way. And we couldn't get caught in that idea of spending lots of money on the children, because we just simply didn't have it. So we could step off that hamster wheel, that idea of indulging them. And so this has continued. But I also recognise that I sometimes still feel that pull from the collective consciousness about Christmas, and that it involves buying presents. But I also feel fortunate that I have enough practice to be able to see that and not believe it, let it go. So there's always been a strong desire to do Christmas differently, and for it to be about presence, being with each other, for each other, rather than about buying gifts. And over the years, the family that gather together at Christmas, more recently we've excuse me, we've started doing a secret Santa where we only buy one gift each. And the more important thing is about being together and enjoying that time together and playing games and making it as eco-friendly as possible with things like reusable crackers and being creative. I put here, it's also a creative time, but actually in my life, when isn't it a creative time? But I do like it as a time to make something for family members. And it also feels like a time when I can be creative without it being related to my business or my work. So as the description of the retreat acknowledged, what will be more helpful and truer than getting caught in the silly season is to heed nature's call to slow down, take stock and embrace this dark season. I know some people find it really difficult at this time of year when there's less light and sunshine. So perhaps we can be a light for each other. I think that's something we're really good at Sangha, supporting each other. And I hope everyone feels supported on this retreat and not taking on more than they can cope with. And we can remember that because of interbeing, we can support each other and help each other in our practice together. Not just on this retreat, of course. Our practice helps and supports others in the world, those who are caught in that collective consciousness, caught in the busyness of over-consuming for Christmas. And so I find it helpful to remember that I'm not doing this for myself. I'm practicing on behalf of those that haven't come across the practice, or who don't have the strength to practice for themselves. And so for me, this time of year is about letting go, letting be, and being kind to myself. And of course, if we pay attention at all to nature, we can see that each season has its merits. And it's completely different from the previous season. For those of you who know anything about Christianity, you may recognize this teaching. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. And that's what came to mind for me when I was writing this. And for me, this speaks about impermanence, paying attention to impermanence and not trying to hold on to what's past, letting go, letting be. Each season has its merits. The earth needs this quiet, fallow time of year to prepare the seeds for growth when the sap rises in the spring. And sometimes I feel like I've forgotten that I too need to heed the seasons and have a quiet time to rest and replenish. I know many of you will know of and will have read the book Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, which Sarah lent me to read. And there are many things I love about it. And one of them is how Robin talks about people and non-human people. And that seems to me giving everyone and everything equity. We would call this interbeing. And how much can we learn from our non-human friends? So paying attention to what's happening seasonally and heeding that rather than trying to resist this dark time of year. And Tai, of course, understood this. He constantly uses metaphors and analogies from nature in his teachings. Be a tree in the storm, deeply rooted in the earth. Be solid and stable like a mountain. Let thoughts pass through the consciousness freely, like clouds moving across a windy sky. When I was working on preparing this Dharma talk, I recognised I had a subtle intention to provide a kind of tick list of how we can navigate this season. And that was an incorrect approach. I'm sure there will be takeaways for each of you from this talk, but I don't feel it's my role to say what they will be. And actually it's better for me simply to reflect on what's important for me at this time of year and let go of any particular outcomes that you may or may not receive. And I want to acknowledge that it takes courage to practice on this path. When we are swimming upstream, going against the collective consciousness, caught in consumerism, the collective consciousness that's caught in the idea of getting and therefore the idea of lacking. And this is why I'm here, to be with Sangha, to be with people who practice like I do, who have a similar deep heart yearning for a simple, easier life, unfettered by possessions and all that entails. And the gifts that we can give each other on this retreat cost nothing and are more genuine and authentic. Gifts like kindness, patience, acceptance, generosity. And these jewels have a lot of worth. And perhaps that's some of what we're looking for, what we're hoping to get out of this retreat. When I was writing this, I was in the middle of a 9-day craft festival that involved being in a marquee in the middle of York, demonstrating and hopefully selling some of my paper collages, as well as offering workshops for people to have a go for themselves. It's quite an odd thing to do in a way, in terms of the practice, and I recognise feeling a bit conflicted about it, because on the one hand, I want people to buy my artwork and not just tell me how lovely it is, but then am I contributing and adding to consumerism? And the way I resolve this is to acknowledge that things work out differently to what I expect or even hope for. So I may not sell as much as I'd like or want to, but then someone comes along and asks me to run a workshop for their group, and I'm really happy to do that. And for the people who come to the taster workshops, they get a lot out of gifting themselves an hour out of their busy day to do something creative, maybe something they've not tried before. And so there's a clue for me. If I stop striving for something in particular outcome, and have the patience to sit back, wait and see what's happening, then I can let the lotus blossom emerge out of the mud without me having to dig around for it. It will organically emerge. And of course, if I do dig in the mud for the lotus, it's never going to emerge. The flower won't grow properly, if at all. And so there's a clue for me to stop striving and trust that something beautiful will emerge. Do the work of paper collaging for the sake of the process itself and not in order to make some money. And actually I got into the creative process not to earn a living, but to feed a need that I have to be creative, to use my hands in this expressive way, in this particular way. And I do have a skill in producing beautiful artwork, so I don't need to hide that light under a bushel. At last weekend I was at another artisan fair, Crafts in the Pen, and this was the first time I had my new poetry postcards for sale. And I realised then that if someone takes the time to stop and read a card with a poem on it, whether they buy it or not, I've already gifted them something. And they've received something that perhaps was unexpected for them in the middle of a craft fair, a moment of mindfulness. There were a few things that have been coming together for me as I prepared this Dharma talk. Gifts from the universe in terms of conversations and study. And actually it really feels to me like Tai is holding my hand and guiding me, which he has done over many years of teaching. And that feels a really good place to be. I can lean into Tai's teaching and all the stream of teachers that I've met in this practice and this tradition. And one of these gifts is a reading from Understanding the Mind, which Jonathan asked if we could look at in one of our aspirant chats. And I always find in the mentoring meetings, whoever it's with, we have these amazing conversations. Whether it's based on a particular aspect of Tai's teachings or one of the 14 mindfulness trainings or some part of a study or sutra. So I'm going to ask Jonathan to read this excerpt, please.
Shall we perhaps have a bell?
Yes, please.
For awakening to flower, we have to sow the seed of awakening in our store of consciousness. If we only use our mind consciousness for mental gymnastics, we won't get very far. Many people keep the teachings they learn up in their mind consciousness, using their intellect to poke and prod at them. Even though they think about them and talk about them all the time, they never learn how to bring the seeds of the Dharma into their store consciousness and entrust them to the fertile soil. If we practice meditation with your mind consciousness alone, you can never succeed. Don't think or reason too much about the things you learn from a meditation teacher. Instead, sow the Dharma seeds in your store consciousness. Then, in your everyday life, whether you are walking, standing, lying down, sitting, cooking, or working at a computer. Water those seeds with mindfulness. Your store consciousness, your plot of land, will allow these Dharma seeds to germinate and the flower of awakening to grow.
Thank you. I didn't recall coming across this particular teaching before, but when we looked at it, I loved it. And after our conversation, I said to Jonathan, I feel like we've just written my Dharma talk. And then I had to let go of trying to remember what we talked about and holding on to anything. I just let it be. Because I didn't want it to turn into the mental gymnastics. And so I reflected, am I playing mental gymnastics with the practice and not trusting? Or can I trust and rest? Let inspiration and insight arise without gnawing at it like a dog with a bone. And in this extract, I really like the fact that Ty mentioned working at the computer. And this helped me be more mindful in writing the Dharma talk when I was typing it on the computer. Not pushing on as I have a tendency to do, but taking the time to get up, move away from the computer, stretch and move my body. And I'm learning that it's good to take note of those clear internal prompts that say things like stop, let go, get up and move. So I thought perhaps we could do this now and have a little movement. So let's just find some space for ourselves to stand. Ideally with enough space to spread your arms out to the side. We're not going to do the 10 mindful movements, but we are going to do something which I actually learned here on one of our retreats, so some of you may remember this. They're very simple movements. And I know I've just invited everyone to stand up, but if you prefer to do this sitting down, please do. Please listen to your own body. And just pay attention to your needs. So there's a word with each movement, and they follow the breath. So the first one is on the in-breath, and the second on the out-breath. And they're very simple, and we'll just repeat it a few times. Gathering, rising, expanding, contracting, receiving, donating, descending, dispersing, gathering, rising, expanding, contracting, receiving, donating, descending, dispersing, gathering, rising, expanding, contracting, receiving, donating, descending, dispersing, gathering, rising, expanding, contracting, receiving, donating, descending, dispersing. And just give yourselves a little shake. We'll sit down again. And going back to the extract from Understanding Our Mind, how does this relate to the theme of heeding the guidance from nature to slow down? For me, it's a clear message of sowing seeds in the store consciousness and then being patient, giving them time to appear in their own time, and letting go of that energy that I notice quite often. I want something to happen now, instead of when the time's right. This morning in meditation, we practiced a version of the Anapanasati Sutra, the sutra on the full awareness of breathing. And quite often it's condensed into the meditation that we will recognize: in, out, deep, slow, calm, ease, smile, release, present moment, wonderful moment. When I started my practice, I used to think this was a beginner's meditation and that I would move on to some of the deeper practices with more insight and I wouldn't need this one anymore. And then when I was researching my PhD, it was suggested that I look at the kind of progression of mindfulness from the Buddha's teachings to see how Thay's teachings fitted in with that. And one of the things I realised that the whole of the Anapanasati Sutra is in that simple meditation, in, out, deep, slow. Thay has used his skill and his teachings to reduce a complex sutra in a way that our Western mind can understand and take in. And then it felt like if only I can practice those words fully, I actually don't need anything else. But how often do I appreciate how much of the teachings are in those simple words, in, out, deep, slow. And actually it also incorporates the Satipatthana Sutra, the 4 establishments of mindfulness: body, feelings, mental formations, and objects of the mind. With in, out, deep, slow, we're coming in contact with the body, the breath in the body. Calm, ease connects us to our feelings. Smile, release to our mental formations. And present moment, wonderful moment, to our objects of mind. It allows us to touch each aspect with a true sense of seeing things as they are, without our usual attachments to them. There is a body here. It's quite different to, this is my body and it's a bit achy and I'm feeling a bit tired and my knee hurts, and all those other things that we say to ourselves. There are feelings present, not my feelings that I have to do something with or work at or get rid of. And so I found that seeing myself in this way can loosen the attachments to my body, my feelings, my mental formations, my perceptions, and help me have more clarity to see things as they are. And this body understands, even if we don't, in our mind consciousness, in the physicality of being still, of grounding ourselves, knowing how our body is. This sends messages of calm to the brain. It sends messages like, it's okay, there's no danger here because the body is still, it's not running. We're calming the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system. And the simple act of sitting and just breathing has an impact on the whole body, mind, breath instrument. The mind is in the body, receiving these messages of calm and quiet. It's not rushing off somewhere, creating stories. And Tai says in just the first 4 of the 16 exercises on the full awareness of breathing, we can realize the oneness of body and mind. Breathing is an excellent tool for establishing calmness and evenness. And so for me, this comes back to what Tai is saying about not using the teachings as mental gymnastics, but bringing them into the store consciousness and watering them with mindfulness. Conscious breathing. Because we are breathing all the time. The body manages this function perfectly well without any interference from us. But when we breathe consciously, breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. What happens? I notice my mind settling. I'm aware of my body, the position, the posture that I've adopted. I'm not thinking about the past or the future. I'm just here, present and available, sowing seeds of awakening. As Tai says in the commentary to the Satipatthana Sutra, which I read this morning after the meditation, if the body is in a very stable position and all the muscles and the nervous system are relaxed, then the mind and the breath are immediately influenced, and they too are gradually calmed. Similarly, if we practice conscious breathing in the right way, our breathing becomes more regular, calm and harmonious with every moment. And this regularity, calmness and harmony of breathing will spread to our body and mind, and the body and mind will benefit from it. He begins the paragraph with, when body and mind are one, the wounds in our hearts, minds and bodies begin to heal. As long as there is a separation between body and mind, these wounds can't heal. During sitting meditation, the 3 elements of breath, body and mind are calmed, and gradually they become one. When peace is established in one of the 3 elements, the other 2 will soon have peace also. But isn't this wonderful? When we're practicing what I thought was a basic beginner's meditation, we can actually heal the wounds in our heart, our mind, our body. And isn't that what this time of year is about? Resting like the animal in the forest that knows it needs healing, listening to the wisdom of nature, of our non-human people. Could we have a bell, please? Thai also references this ease in a reading from the book Fear. He says, whether standing, walking or sitting in meditation, you can use your in-breath and your out-breath to help yourself stop. You stop totally in the present moment. And when you stop, you're master of your body and of your mind. You will not allow your habit energy to carry you away in compulsively thinking of something in the past or the future, of this or that project. You train yourself to stop, to relax and be at peace. Sitting meditation is not for fighting. You let go of everything. When a thought comes, you say hello, and then you say goodbye straight away. When other thoughts come, just say hello and goodbye again. Don't fight. Don't say, oh, I'm so bad, I think of so many things. You don't need to think like that. Just say hi and bye, and you relax. You bring your mind to the present moment and rest in awareness of your body. It's like soaking mung beans in water. You don't need to force the water to enter the mung bean. You let the mung bean be in the water, and slowly, slowly it goes in. Gradually, the mung bean gets saturated, swollen and tender. The same is true for you. Letting go, the tension will be released, slowly, 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 and you will become more relaxed and more peaceful. The training is just to keep bringing your mind back to the present moment with your body. I love this advice from Thai. We use it in the Be Calm, Be Happy course. I love the gentleness and allowing nature of it, not fighting, letting go, and the practice of patience that it invites. I often get impatient, wanting things to happen quickly. And in terms of my practice, if it doesn't noticeably change when I'm practicing something in particular, I get frustrated and I think I'm doing it wrong. And in this advice, Thai also recognises this negativity bias of the brain, to always jump to the negative. I must be doing something wrong, rather than maybe it just needs a bit more time. Slowing down at this time of year for me has sometimes been sitting by the stove and watching TV. Sometimes that's fine, and it's not always the most mindful way to be. And I want to consciously choose how I enter into this dark time of year, without it being either oppressive because there's less light and sunshine, or manic because I'm getting caught in the collective consciousness of Christmas. So being aware of what I consume, what I take in through my senses, and making conscious choices rather than being swept away in the collective consciousness. Consciously and deliberately taking time to let ourselves rest, closing the doors of our senses, following our breathing, collecting our mind and body and breath so they become one. This isn't about cutting ourselves off from society or from life, but following a natural rhythm of activity and rest. Like an actor on stage who needs time to replenish by going backstage. We don't always need to be on stage. The wise choice is to listen to the season and follow its wise guidance. And also not judging ourselves about these reminders, but enjoying them. Sometimes my mind consciousness reacts negatively when I hear a teaching that I've heard before or read before. I should know this. Why don't I practice this? I know I've heard it before. But as Ty reminds us, playing with the teaching in the mind consciousness isn't effective or helpful, and actually doesn't allow it to become a natural practice for us. We have to let it sink into the store consciousness and germinate there, seeding and growing when the time's right. So this time, on this retreat, let's enjoy hearing again the teachings that we've heard before, with the intention of taking them into our hearts, our store consciousness, and watering them with diligence, mindfulness, concentration. I'm going to end this talk with a poem. Some of you will have heard this poem before, and I think some of you were definitely there in Ilkley on the Dharma Training Programme retreat when I wrote it. And for me, it really sums up what I've been speaking about. That we need each other to support our practice. It's not only okay, but vital to swim upstream against the current of collective consciousness. And we can do this because of Sangha. That each of us has our own way of saying, that's enough for me for now. And that we can trust that inner knowledge. And we can also trust the outer knowledge in the season, this time of slowing down, taking things a bit easier, doing things differently to what we did in the spring and the summer. The poem's called The Quiet Rebellion. Standing still, when the impetus is to rush into the future on a never-ending chase of tomorrows. Sitting in peace, when it seems the whole world is running in fear and agitation. Breathing slow, when the collective consciousness is faster, faster, faster. Looking at trees, when social media demands your attention. Scroll, scroll, keep scrolling. Resting, when every cell in your body vibrates with energy. Being peace, the ultimate act of quiet rebellion against a too fast, too demanding, too much society. Be a quiet rebel. Thank you for listening.